What if motivation isn't missing, it's just buried? The problem isn't laziness, it's disconnection from purpose. Big changes don't start with big steps, they start with the tiniest wins. When we talk about motivating the unmotivated, the very first and most essential step is to understand their why. Motivation is never born in a vacuum. People rarely wake up one day and decide to take massive action without a deeper force driving them. Beneath every choice, every struggle, every burst of energy, there is always a reason, sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden. If someone appears unmotivated, it's often not because they lack ambition or ability, but because their why is unclear, buried, or disconnected from what they are being asked to do. Think about it this way: every person has a fire inside, but for some, it's smoldering under ashes. The role of motivation is not to create fire from nothing, but to fan the flames that already exist. When you want to motivate someone who seems unmotivated, your first responsibility is to ask, what truly matters to this person? What would make them get up in the morning with a sense of purpose? Without answering that question, no pep talk, no strategy, no reward system will ever create lasting drive. Understanding someone's why requires listening more than speaking. It means going beyond surface level answers like "I want money" or "I want success." Those statements may sound like motivations, but they are outcomes, not reasons. If someone says they want money, ask them why. Do they want money for freedom, for security, to take care of their family, or to prove something to themselves? Each answer carries a different emotional weight, and each one leads to a different source of motivation. The unmotivated often appear lazy, but laziness is usually just misdirected energy. Imagine trying to run a marathon without knowing the finish line or even why you're running. How long would you last before your body and mind resisted? Motivation without meaning burns out quickly. When you help someone identify their why, you give them a finish line worth running toward, even when it's hard, even when obstacles show up. It's important to realize that everyone's why is deeply personal. For one person, their why might be the dream of creating a better life for their children. For another, it could be proving to themselves that they are capable of more than what others expect. For some, it's about contribution, wanting to make a difference in their community or in the world. And for others, their why may be freedom, the ability to choose their own path without being controlled by circumstance. Whatever it is, once they connect to it, the shift from unmotivated to unstoppable becomes possible. But here's the challenge: many people don't even know their why. They live day by day, caught in routines, going through the motions. When asked about their goals, they might shrug or give vague answers. This doesn't mean they don't have a why, it simply means no one has helped them uncover it. That's where true motivation begins, not with pressure or guilt, but with exploration. Ask questions that go deeper. What excites them? What frustrates them? When have they felt most alive? What would they regret not doing 10 years from now? These questions peel back the layers and reveal the core driving force beneath the surface. Once their why is uncovered, everything changes. Suddenly, tasks that once felt heavy begin to feel lighter. A student who struggles to study may start pushing harder when they connect studying with their dream of building a career they love. An employee who drags their feet may come alive when they realize their work is a stepping stone to the freedom they crave. A person who has given up on fitness might find energy again when they connect exercise not just to looking good, but to being healthy enough to play with their kids or live longer to experience more of life. Understanding their why also means respecting that it may not look like your why. What motivates you might not motivate them. You might be driven by achievement while they're driven by stability. You might chase impact while they chase security. Motivation is not one size fits all, and trying to force someone to adopt your reasons for action will almost always fail. Instead, step into their world, see through their eyes. Their why belongs to them, and your role is to help them recognize it, embrace it, and use it as fuel. This approach also prevents you from relying on shallow motivators. Rewards, threats, and external pressures may work for a short time, but they rarely sustain motivation. A student may study to avoid punishment, an employee may work harder for a bonus, and a person may diet for an upcoming event. But once the external pressure fades, so does the drive. Internal motivation, rooted in a powerful why, lasts far longer because it connects to identity and emotion. It is not about what they have to do, but about what they want to become. To truly motivate the unmotivated, you must become curious. You must observe not just their words, but their patterns, their behaviors, and their values. What do they talk about when they are most passionate? What makes their eyes light up in conversation? Even people who claim to have no motivation at all often reveal sparks of passion in small, subtle ways. Pay attention to those sparks. They point directly to their why. And remember, understanding their why is not a one-time conversation. People grow, circumstances change, and with them, motivations evolve. Someone's why at 20 may not be their why at 40. That's why staying connected to their evolving purpose is essential. It keeps motivation alive, not just for a season, but for a lifetime. When it comes to motivation, one of the most overlooked truths is that massive results don't happen overnight. People often look at success stories and assume that those individuals leapt from zero to greatness in a single bound, but the reality is far different. Real progress is built step by step, with small wins that add up over time. This is especially important when you're trying to motivate the unmotivated, because someone who feels stuck or defeated is not ready to tackle a mountain. They need to climb one hill at a time, and every hill they conquer builds the momentum to keep going. Small wins are powerful because they shift focus from what feels impossible to what feels achievable. For someone who feels unmotivated, the biggest barrier is often overwhelm. They see the distance between where they are and where they want to be, and the gap looks too wide. The dream feels too big. The workload feels too heavy, so they do nothing at all. This paralysis is natural, but it can be broken the moment they achieve something small, something they can point to and say, "I did that." That victory, no matter how tiny, sparks a sense of progress. And progress, even in small doses, feeds motivation. Think of momentum like rolling a snowball down a hill. At the top, the snowball is tiny and fragile. It takes effort to get it moving, but once it starts rolling, it gathers more snow, grows in size, and moves faster with less effort. Small wins are the initial push that sets the snowball in motion. Each one builds confidence and energy, and before long, the person who once resisted action is moving forward almost automatically. The psychology behind small wins is rooted in how our brains respond to achievement. Each time we complete a task, our brain releases a small hit of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. This chemical reinforcement doesn't just make us feel good. It makes us want to repeat the behavior. That's why checking a box on a to-do list feels satisfying even for a small task. It's not the size of the accomplishment that matters, but the fact that something was completed. Over time, these small bursts of satisfaction create a rhythm of accomplishment, making the unmotivated person more likely to take the next step. Imagine someone who hasn't exercised in years. If you tell them to run 5 miles tomorrow, chances are they won't even lace up their shoes. The task feels impossible, but if you ask them to walk for just 10 minutes, suddenly it feels doable. When they complete that walk, they feel a small sense of pride. The next day, they might walk 15 minutes. A week later, they might jog for 5 minutes. Each small win builds on the last until eventually the idea of running a mile or 5 miles no longer feels out of reach. Momentum has taken over. This principle applies everywhere in careers, relationships, personal goals, and even habits. A student who feels overwhelmed by a huge research paper can start by writing just one paragraph. An employee who dreads an intimidating project can begin by completing a single section. A person trying to save money can start by putting aside a small amount each week. None of these actions solve the entire problem immediately, but they create visible progress, and progress is the lifeblood of motivation. The key to making small wins effective is to set the bar low enough to encourage action, but high enough to feel meaningful. If the step is too big, it will trigger the same sense of overwhelm that caused paralysis in the first place. If it's too small, it won't generate the pride needed to spark momentum. The sweet spot lies in challenges that stretch a person slightly beyond their comfort zone while still remaining within reach. Each win then becomes a stepping stone to the next, gradually increasing in difficulty as confidence grows. Another reason small wins matter so much is that they create proof. When someone feels unmotivated, they often struggle with self-belief. They doubt their ability to change, to achieve, to push through. Telling them they can succeed isn't enough. They need evidence. Small wins provide that evidence. They prove in real time that progress is possible. Every completed task is a reminder, I am capable. This shift in identity, from someone who avoids action to someone who takes action, is far more powerful than external motivation alone. It's also important to celebrate these wins, no matter how small they seem. Recognition reinforces the behavior and deepens the emotional connection to progress. A simple acknowledgement, whether from others or from oneself, turns a small accomplishment into a meaningful milestone. The act of pausing to appreciate progress keeps motivation alive and reminds the person that they are moving forward, even if the journey is long. Small wins also protect against burnout. Big goals can feel like a marathon with no finish line in sight, which can drain energy and lead to giving up. But breaking the journey into smaller checkpoints creates multiple finish lines along the way. Each one provides a burst of energy, making the journey feel less daunting and more rewarding. The unmotivated person, instead of dreading the endless road ahead, begins to look forward to the next checkpoint, the next win, the next moment of progress. When people are unmotivated, it's tempting to push them toward big leaps, to demand massive changes, or to expect dramatic results. But real change rarely works that way. The human spirit responds best to progress that feels real and sustainable. That's why small wins are not just helpful, they are essential. They create the momentum that transforms hesitation into action, doubt into confidence, and inertia into unstoppable drive. When people think about motivation, they often picture willpower, inner strength, or discipline as the ultimate sources of drive. While those qualities are important, the truth is that no one operates in isolation. Our surroundings, physical spaces, social circles, and daily routines shape our energy more than we realize. A person can have ambition and dreams, but if their environment constantly drains them, distracts them, or discourages them, their motivation will slowly fade. On the other hand, a supportive and energizing environment can transform even the most unmotivated person into someone who takes consistent action. The environment is not just about where you live or work, it's about the conditions you place yourself in every single day. Imagine trying to grow a plant in toxic soil with no sunlight. No matter how strong the seed is, it will struggle to grow. Human beings are no different. Motivation thrives in environments that nurture growth, clarity, and encouragement. If someone feels unmotivated, it's worth asking, is the environment feeding their energy or draining it? Physical space plays a massive role. A cluttered, chaotic space often leads to a cluttered, chaotic mind. When your environment is messy or filled with distractions, your brain struggles to focus, and tasks feel heavier than they really are. By contrast, a clean, organized space signals order and possibility. Something as simple as clearing a desk, adding natural light, or creating a dedicated work area can spark a shift in energy. The unmotivated person may not even realize how much their surroundings are influencing their state of mind until the space changes. Beyond the physical, the social environment has an even greater impact. The people around us can either fuel our drive or smother it. Being surrounded by negativity, constant criticism, or low energy individuals can make anyone feel unmotivated. It's not that people are weak, it's that energy is contagious. If the group around you is always complaining, settling, or resisting growth, it becomes harder to rise above that atmosphere. But when you place yourself among people who are ambitious, encouraging, and disciplined, their energy rubs off, conversations shift, standards rise. What once felt impossible starts to feel normal because everyone around you is moving forward. Social environment also includes the way people communicate. Words carry weight. A single encouraging comment can inspire action, while constant doubt or ridicule can paralyze someone. For the unmotivated, being in an environment where their efforts are acknowledged, even in small ways, can ignite momentum. Support doesn't always have to be grand gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet assurance that someone believes in them, that their progress matters, and that their struggles are seen. Routines and systems within an environment also shape energy. If someone's daily structure is chaotic, filled with endless distractions and no sense of rhythm, motivation becomes harder to sustain. But when the environment supports structure, clear schedules, healthy habits, predictable anchors throughout the day, it becomes easier to stay consistent. A person who feels unmotivated to exercise, for example, might transform their energy simply by setting their workout clothes by the bed the night before. That small environmental cue reduces resistance in the moment and nudges them toward action. Technology is another overlooked element of environment. In today's world, devices constantly pull attention in 100 directions. Social media, notifications, and endless digital noise drain focus and scatter energy. For someone already struggling with motivation, an environment filled with constant digital temptation makes progress even harder. Adjusting the environment by setting boundaries with devices, turning off unnecessary alerts, or creating tech-free spaces can dramatically improve focus and energy. The absence of distraction itself creates room for motivation to grow. Nature, too, is a powerful environmental factor. Studies consistently show that being in natural settings reduces stress, increases creativity, and boosts mood. A walk outside, fresh air, or even adding plants into a workspace can shift energy in ways that artificial settings cannot. For someone who feels stagnant, reconnecting with natural environments often recharges their mental and emotional batteries. The environment doesn't just shape motivation. It restores it when it's been depleted. It's also worth considering the invisible environment, the internal environment of thoughts and beliefs. While external surroundings play a large role, the stories people tell themselves form a mental environment that can either empower or weaken motivation. If someone constantly repeats to themselves, "I can't do this," or "I always fail," that inner environment becomes toxic. By contrast, reshaping self-talk to focus on effort, progress, and possibility creates an internal space that energizes rather than suffocates. Though this environment exists in the mind, it is often influenced by external cues, what people hear, what they consume, and who they spend time with. Changing the environment does not always mean massive overhauls. It often begins with small adjustments that shift energy in noticeable ways. Replacing one negative influence with a positive one, redesigning one corner of a room for focus, changing the type of content consumed daily, all of these create ripples that affect motivation. Once those ripples build, the environment itself becomes an ally rather than an enemy. Ultimately, energy flows where environment directs it. A person may believe they lack motivation when, in truth, they are simply living in a space that suppresses it. By shaping an environment that supports clarity, positivity, structure, and growth, even those who once seemed unmotivated can find themselves moving forward with renewed energy and drive. When most people think about motivation, they think about tasks. They think about getting someone to study harder, to exercise more, to work longer, or to focus on the job that needs to be done. But here's the deeper truth. Tasks alone rarely inspire lasting motivation. At best, they trigger short bursts of effort that fade as soon as the novelty or pressure wears off. If you want to motivate the unmotivated in a way that sticks, the focus must shift away from simply pushing tasks and instead move toward transforming identity. People are far more consistent when their actions align with who they believe themselves to be. Identity is the core of human behavior. When people see themselves in a certain way, their actions naturally follow. If someone identifies as a healthy person, they don't need constant reminders to exercise or eat well. Those behaviors flow from their sense of self. If someone identifies as a disciplined worker, showing up on time and giving full effort is second nature. On the other hand, if someone sees themselves as lazy, unorganized, or incapable, no amount of external pushing will truly last, because their identity will always pull them back to old habits. The unmotivated often struggle because their identity has been shaped by past failures, negative feedback, or long stretches of inactivity. They don't just think, "I didn't do this task." They think, "I am the kind of person who never follows through." That belief about identity becomes a cage. Breaking free requires more than demanding action. It requires reshaping how they see themselves. This shift can start small. Identity is not rebuilt overnight. It is reconstructed through repeated evidence that supports a new story. If someone wants to build the identity of being disciplined, they don't need to transform their entire life in one day. They need to start with one disciplined choice, however small. Each choice is a vote for a new identity. Every time they show up, even in a tiny way, they prove to themselves, "I am becoming this type of person." Over time, these small pieces of evidence accumulate, and the story in their mind shifts from "I can't" to "I am." The reason identity-driven motivation is so powerful is that it taps into pride, self-respect, and consistency. Human beings crave alignment between who they think they are and how they act. If someone begins to adopt the identity of being reliable, then skipping commitments will feel uncomfortable because it contradicts their self-image. If someone begins to embrace the identity of being strong, then neglecting their health will feel out of place. This internal pressure is far stronger than external rules or encouragement. Identity makes motivation self-sustaining because people naturally act in ways that confirm who they believe themselves to be. It's also important to recognize that identity is shaped not only by personal choices, but also by language and environment. The words people use to describe themselves matter. Saying, "I'm trying to quit smoking," keeps the identity of a smoker alive. Saying, "I don't smoke," reflects an identity shift. Similarly, saying, "I want to get fit," frames health as an occasional task, but saying, "I am a healthy person," reframes it as an identity. When the unmotivated begin to change their language, they begin to change their story, and with it, their actions. This is why motivating the unmotivated is not about piling on tasks, but about helping them see themselves differently. Instead of saying, "You need to go to the gym," help them adopt the mindset of, "I am the kind of person who takes care of my body." Instead of saying, "You need to study harder," help them see, "I am a focused learner." Instead of saying, "You should save money," guide them toward, "I am responsible with my finances." The difference may look small on the surface, but the psychological impact is massive. Stories and role models also play a role in identity shift. When people see others who resemble them embracing a new identity, it opens the door for them to believe the same is possible. If someone grew up believing they could never be disciplined, seeing an example of a person with a similar background who changed their identity plants a powerful seed. That seed says, "If they can, I can too." The unmotivated often need to see living proof that transformation is not only possible but accessible. Identity also brings resilience. Tasks can fail, goals can be missed, but if the identity is strong, people bounce back faster. A runner might miss a workout, but if they see themselves as a runner, they'll return the next day without hesitation. A writer might skip a day, but if they believe they are a writer, they'll keep writing. Identity creates continuity. Without it, every missed task feels like a collapse. With it, setbacks are temporary detours rather than dead ends. This approach explains why external motivation, rewards, punishments, deadlines, rarely produces lasting change. Those methods can force behavior for a while, but they do not alter identity. Once the external motivator disappears, the old self-image resurfaces, and with it, the old habits. Internal motivation, rooted in identity, is what endures. When people no longer act because they have to, but because it's simply who they are, motivation becomes effortless. To motivate the unmotivated, the challenge is not to add more pressure or to make tasks sound easier. The challenge is to spark a new self-story, to invite them to imagine themselves as someone greater, stronger, and more capable than they currently believe, and then to help them gather evidence, small, consistent wins, that prove this story true. Over time, the identity becomes unshakable, and once the identity is solid, the tasks take care of themselves. One of the most underestimated forces in motivation is the influence of others. People often think motivation is about words, about speeches, about what you say to convince someone to act. While words can inspire, they rarely have the power to sustain. What truly influences people, especially those who feel unmotivated, is not what you tell them, but what you show them. Your energy, your behavior, your consistency, and your example create an environment that silently communicates what is possible. When someone sees energy embodied rather than just preached, they absorb it in ways that no lecture ever could. Energy is contagious. Every human being has felt it. You walk into a room where people are excited, focused, and driven, and suddenly you feel more alert yourself. You enter a space filled with negativity, boredom, or lethargy, and your energy immediately dips. This isn't a coincidence. It's human psychology. People mirror the emotions and attitudes of those around them, often without realizing it. That's why leading by example matters so much. If you're trying to motivate the unmotivated, your energy has to model the drive and discipline you hope they will embrace. Consider a leader who tells their team to work hard but shows up late, unprepared, and unfocused. Their words lose all power because their example contradicts the message. Now picture another leader who arrives early, prepared and engaged. They don't need to give long speeches about discipline. Their presence communicates it. The same is true in families, friendships, and communities. Children don't follow what parents say nearly as much as they follow what parents do. Friends are influenced less by advice and more by the behaviors they consistently witness. Even strangers can feel inspired by observing someone living with passion and dedication. For the unmotivated, this principle is even more important. When someone is stuck in inertia, they're not looking for theories. They're looking for proof. They need to see that change is possible, that effort leads to results, that energy is worth investing. When they see someone close to them embodying those truths, it becomes harder to deny. Action becomes less abstract and more real. They begin to think, if they can live that way, maybe I can too. Leading by example also removes resistance. The unmotivated often reject advice because advice feels like pressure. When someone feels pushed, their natural instinct is to push back. But example doesn't demand, it invites. Watching someone live with focus and energy plants seeds in the mind without confrontation. Over time, those seeds grow, not because someone was told what to do, but because they saw a living model of what could be. Energy itself goes beyond actions. It is about presence. You can do the same task with low energy or high energy, and the difference in impact is enormous. A teacher who lectures in a monotone voice may have all the knowledge in the world, but their energy repels attention. A teacher who speaks with passion, variety, and engagement captures attention without effort. The same task, delivering information, produces completely different outcomes because of the energy behind it. When you want to motivate someone unmotivated, your energy must carry conviction, excitement, and belief. People don't just follow actions, they absorb emotions. It's also important to recognize that leading by example doesn't mean being perfect. In fact, showing struggles openly can be even more motivating. If someone only sees the highlight reel, flawless discipline, constant positivity, they might feel discouraged, believing they can't live up to that standard. But when you show your humanity, when you admit that you also face setbacks but keep moving anyway, you become relatable. That relatability makes your example stronger because it shows perseverance, not perfection. The unmotivated don't need a superhero to inspire them. They need a human being who keeps showing up despite challenges. Consistency is another key element of leading by example. Anyone can be motivated for a day or a week, but the unmotivated are watching for patterns. They are looking to see if the energy is real or temporary. When they witness someone consistently following through, working on their craft, sticking to routines, maintaining discipline even when it's inconvenient, that consistency becomes evident. It shows that motivation is not a fleeting mood, but a lifestyle choice. That example can slowly reshape their beliefs about what's possible for them too. Leading by energy also involves how you treat others. Encouragement, patience, and respect amplify motivation in ways that criticism rarely does. A leader, parent, or friend who combines personal discipline with genuine support creates a magnetic influence. The unmotivated feel less judged and more inspired, less pressured and more included. Your energy becomes a source of safety as well as inspiration. People are not just motivated by what they see you do, but by how they feel in your presence. If your energy lifts them up, they will naturally be drawn toward action. Finally, leading by example and energy requires self-awareness. You cannot inspire others if your own energy is consistently depleted. That means taking responsibility for your own habits, health, mindset, and emotional state. If you live in burnout, negativity, or constant complaint, that is the energy you transmit, and that is the example others see. On the other hand, when you protect your energy through healthy routines, positive input, and clear purpose, you radiate motivation without even trying. Your example becomes a silent teacher, and your energy becomes a force that pulls others forward without needing to push them. Motivating the unmotivated is never about quick tricks, empty pep talks, or temporary fixes. It's about going deeper, understanding their why, breaking progress into small wins, shaping an environment that fuels energy, shifting identity from task-driven to self-driven, and leading by example with the kind of presence that inspires action. Each of these pieces works together like gears in a machine, creating momentum that transforms resistance into motion and hesitation into confidence. At its core, motivation is not something you hand to someone. It's something you help them discover within themselves. When people reconnect with meaning, celebrate progress, align their actions with who they believe they are, and surround themselves with energy that uplifts instead of drains, they no longer need to be pushed. They begin to pull themselves forward, and once that happens, what once seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable.